John Whalen, welcome to Business Insider. Shareholder
Thank you.
in a manufacturing company up here on the
Yeah.
Hunter. Out of Sydney 10 years ago.
Indeed.
We might cover off a whole heap of that stuff.
Yeah.
10 years, a lot's changed in Newcastle. What's
has.
changed in Newcastle and how well has it changed over the last 10 years?
So let me start back at 10 years ago. Robert Lovell decided to move to Newcastle because the steel was supplied out of Newcastle and the three biggest clients in the rail industry were in Newcastle. So that was a good move.
It was.
And we came here and the first question we asked was who we would be our best committee or association to be with. And Sharon Grierson said, go and see John Coyle, which has probably been one of the best pieces of advice I've had from a politician ever in my life. And HunterNet has been in our court with us in all the trying times that we've been through in the last 10 years.
What is special about HunterNet?
That is something that even HunterNet sit down and look at their navels and try and work out what it is. It's a unique co-op and association born out of the closure of BHP. When some far-sighted men sat around the table and said, let's not feel sorry for ourselves, what are we going to do? So Josh Julius and John Coyle and Tony Masters, to name but a few, Neville Sawyer, sat around and said, let's do something. And they formed this co-op, which was they were helped by the state government. And what in fact it does now is that it is a networking group, a group that's got a series of subcommittees that cover mining, infrastructure, defence. And these mining and infrastructure and defence committees are the best market sensitive providers of information to we, the manufacturer, supplying to those industries that you could ever see.
You've got others to choose from. You've got New South Wales Business Chamber or Hunter, the Hunter Chamber up here. Is there overlap or are they different? Do they serve different roles?
They serve different roles. The AIG came out of the metal trades and they do provide a very good assistance, and in fact we're members of that organisation, and they do provide very good assistance in workers' compensation matters and things like that. But they don't provide this intensive networking and, more importantly, market intelligence of what's going on. The Business Chamber is important, yes. One of my companies is a member of the Business Chamber, but not other than a meeting place and a place where you network. But certainly where HunterNet has morphed into this market intelligence role, they are probably, I would think, one of the best co-ops in manufacturing in a region anywhere in Australia. There isn't one like this in Penrith. Wollongong, they've tried.
Again, I come back to what makes them different. You've just had a planning day, which I think makes them a little different because they took all their members who wanted to attend. What came out of the planning day?
Well, that's confidential. You see, that's so market sensitive. We can't. I'm not at liberty to discuss that, but that is truly over the horizon, intuitive and innovatory thinking, Mark. This is really something that is, I think, I dare say, something that other people would give their eye teeth to know about. But certainly it was based on innovation to the individual corporations and innovating HunterNet itself.
Well, can we talk about innovation, because it is a critical part of Mr. Coyle's agenda. What's, no pun intended, what's new in innovation for HunterNet?
The Commonwealth Government have called their department the Department of Innovation and Industry, then Industry and Innovation, then Manufacturing Industry and Innovation. The Commonwealth Public Servants haven't even got it right. No. Then you look at the research that they do on innovation, and the people who do their research are all professors and academics, and they come back and report that no one is doing any innovation. That is primarily, I think, driven by the need for the universities to keep getting funds from the Commonwealth to do research of some other sort, the likes of which we're not quite sure, because the Taine Code still keeps to produce, the rabbits are beating us, and various other things. Now, I mean, I'm being light of the situation, but what is innovation? Innovation is not invention by definition. It is a change in the process. It is an improvement in your marketing. It is improvement in all of those sorts of areas other than just necessarily inventing something new to sell. The leader of the pack really is Steve Jobs. We all look up to Apple as being the most innovatory company in the world, where in fact people like Austins and Peters, in A Passion for Excellence, were writing about innovation and the importance that it had to a corporation 20 years ago. So it's not new in America, but it certainly seems to be new in Australia, although there are a lot of manufacturers who are doing it, but who have this pushback mentality because they're being told by academics about the way they should innovate.
Is it a natural thing? Because your description of what HunterNet, how HunterNet started, they were looking at alliances, they were looking at new ways to do things. My definition of innovation is innovation, when you are looking at the current population of activities and say, I can do this differently.
You're absolutely right. It's a matter of looking at the way you deliver a product to a client. It's the way you process that product. It's the way you manufacture that product. And in this day and age, it's the way you manufacture it so that you use less energy. Now, this whole carbon debate has on the other side of the coin the energy use. The International Energy Agency in Brussels have shown that we are running out of energy. Unfortunately, the carbon tax has been sold on the wrong side of the coin. If it was sold on the side of the coin that said we are running out of energy, and you can see that in the power prices, most of which of course is related to power lines and poles. It's not related to carbon tax, absolutely, and things like that, and the age of the power stations and things like that. But if you look at the consumption of power, that is one of the things that you've got to take into account in your processing. And there are companies here in the Hunter that can give you advice on things like cogen and trigen, where you use the generation of power from some other heat source that you're already producing anyway and you can't escape from.
So I back onto this hobby horse. If innovation can scare people,
Yes.
we need to make our clients, business insiders clients, more comfortable with this idea of going out and talking to strange people. We had a discussion with the CEO of Moroba, the aged care area, and Viv is about sitting down with strange people that she's never sat down with before and talking about how they solve their issues. HunterNet does that now. So how can we make it more palatable?
Well, that was exactly the subject of this navel gazing down the coast, and the question was, how can we be innovatory about the word innovation? And the HunterNet conference that was held during the Innovation Festival was about change and was about looking for a new word to promote the whole activity, a word that didn't necessarily scare the tripe out of a metal bender or a steel bender, small business person here, who I want to point out to you is in fact being very innovatory. Absolutely. They are all doing things, whether it be a new website, whether it be the colour of the product that they produce, whether they be putting a different welding point on this point or that point, introducing better machining methods from overseas. Sometimes innovatory things can be imported. We don't put fences around this word innovation. Last time they put a fence around any good idea, it was in Berlin, and it took us a number of years to knock the fence down. But we've been looking at ways and means of in fact addressing the issue of what is a word that we can use to an SME who has probably built a multi-million-dollar company from being a fitter and turner. How can we address the word to him that doesn't scare him?
Is it about permission?
I hadn't used that word. That's an interesting word, but no, I hadn't looked at permission as being something. It's
giving them approval to, and you know what, sorry.
Yes, I know. I'm just using it in that context.
Yeah.
Right.
It's about making it acceptable. You know, it's recognising that he's been doing it for the last 40 years. That's why he's got a multi-million-dollar business.
That indeed
and
is right.
Celebrating that. And
so in the HunterNet conference, we put together a number of champions, people who had done it. We put together John Clements, who has done it extensively in New Zealand and had the New Zealand experience to bring to the table. But there were people who stood up in the HunterNet conference and who told us of new ways that they'd addressed the issue of the doors that close on a coal train. Now, you wouldn't think that might be an issue, but it's not something that is sexy and is not an Apple computer or an iPad, but is something that is very dangerous if the doors don't close properly and the driver is 3 kilometres away from where the doors are closing. Now, they've invented a very innovatory way of telling him whether it's closed or whether it hasn't. And certainly in the manufacturing business that I've got a small shareholding in, the major shareholder and I spend quite often a lot of time thinking about a new idea, a better way of doing it, or something else that is eminently saleable to the prime. And when we call the primes, we're calling the major rolling stock manufacturers and loco builders and those sorts of big companies that are making locomotives and passenger trains. We try and think of new ways and better ways to solve problems down the mine, in a passenger train, in a locomotive.
do we listen to our clients enough, or our prospects?
We certainly try and do. Listening to your client is just about the most important issue in innovation. If you turn your ears off, and we've been given, some people don't notice it, but we've been given 2 ears and 1 mouth, but people tend to use it in the opposite proportions. But certainly if you use 2 ears and listen intently to what they're saying, including their complaints, then you are doing very well, because if you listen to their complaints and change your product or change your service, that is usually a way that you innovate and become a market leader.
That's a nice way to go into that innovation area, then moves on to where are the issues for the hunter. Do you see some specific actions we need to be taking as a community?
The government's been very good in identifying and helped to identify through Enterprise Connect and through various other projects that they've got in innovation and in area and regional development of identifying the ideas and the innovatory practices, and they're providing a lot of financial support and skill services to identify these particular issues. Where are the issues for the hunter? There are far too many companies that are mining dependent, and they know it, and they know that somewhere, sometime, there may be a turn down. There's a turn down in the price of coal today. What a lot of people don't appreciate is the fact that the coal that goes out the port doesn't go to China. The coal that's going out the port is going to Korea and Japan and a lot of other countries, and it only goes 5% to China. But still, we've got this mentality that we are mining dependent. We're not necessarily mining dependent. We have a lot of suppliers that supply to the rail industry. Yes, indeed, a lot to supply to the rail industry, and there are a lot of companies in here who are looking overseas. We certainly have been looking overseas, and it takes a long time. It takes a long time going to the international rail shows and the international automotive shows, wherein for the first 3 years they take absolutely no notice of you. They walk by and they say, how do you do? And you've got to realise that in an international show like Auto Mechanical or the one in Las Vegas, there are about 25 acres under roof.
Lots of people to walk past.
With over 1,000 stands, and you can have the same person work past you, and when he's been past you 3 years in a row and sees that you're still there, he'll take your business card. He'll say,
then it starts.
That's it. And he says, oh, that's right. Now, he won't be from England, I want to tell you. You can go to England for as long as you like and go to the Manchester Rail Show, and if you weren't born there or you weren't a member of the House of Lords, the English will tell not to even want to speak to you, old boy, realising that you're, of course, one of those Australians who come over and try and teach us to play cricket. So, no, if you go to those other ones, they do take a long time, and it's taken us 10 years now to get markets in Russia, Poland, Italy, the United States, and indeed we sell things to China. And we just roll on the floor and have a good laugh. When we start to sell steel to China, we know that we've just made a very funny issue. We might make a lot of margin on it, but we just do it to tweak their nose.
Indeed, indeed. Because, again, there is a niche there that you can own. Presumably, they can't get it done better in China, so they'll buy yours.
They do, and they do get it done better, and they're very good. Don't underestimate them. Their quality control, their manufacturing processes are very, very good. But every now and again, they find that they can't provide, or they can't make, or something goes wrong, and they ring us up and they say, "Could you sell us a small container of springs?" And we say yes, and they say, "You know, of course it'll be a Chinese price." We go through all those sorts of things, Mark, but we do have a good giggle about selling springs to China, because it's like refrigerators to the Eskimos.
Indeed. The government is doing a significant amount through Austrade and the development of tours to regions. Is the government doing enough, or are we expecting the government to do too much, and it is actually up to the individual companies?
I'm glad you asked me the second question, because I prefer not to comment on the first. Are we expecting them to do too much? There is no other way than getting off your own tail and getting to your client, be they in India, Germany, Russia, or wherever. There is nothing that Austrade can do for you better than you being there and saying to Boris, "We are here to sell you springs." That's when Boris really knows you're serious. Yes, Austrade arrange tours, Austrade arrange trade shows, Austrade have stands at Auto Mechanical where the Australian manufacturers, they do all the things that one could ask for reasonably. But then it is very much up to the individual corporation to go and put their face in the nose of the customer and say, "We are here and we are here for keeps, and we want to sell you a wonderful product."
Okay. Is that where HunterNet can play a greater role, to give you a critical mass, to take an alliance that... Do you find here's the question, do you find HunterNet alliances viable working partners?
Very much so, in specific areas. Mining, defence, infrastructure, domestically. They draw lines which are quite appropriate, and they say, well, export market development is Austrade. They will certainly work closely with Austrade and with AIG Group to have tours to Germany. They've recently had a tour to family-owned manufacturing companies in Germany, which are very interesting, high tech, high innovation, and they've arranged a tour for us to go over there to see how the Germans do it. And it's all very interesting about how the Germans do it. So they are participators in a broader scheme of things that's developed by Austrade and developed by AI Group.
Okay. I've heard on good authority that you're sometimes referred to as the grenade thrower within HunterNet. You can deny or accept that. If we offered you a grenade now, where would you throw it and why?
Well, firstly, let me point out to you the analogy with the hand grenade. The hand grenade is an analogy to putting an issue on the desk and saying you've got to deal with it. It's not going to go away. So the hand grenade, you either got to defuse, and if you've been in the army and you've watched a trooper in a dugout freeze with a hand grenade in his hand out of terror, you know what it's about when someone pulls the pin on a hand grenade and says throw it, and in fear he sits there with it in his hand and he can't do anything. So the hand grenade on the desk analogy is to sit there and say, well, you've either got to throw it out the window, you've got to diffuse it, or you've got to do something about it. You can't put it onto the desk and hope that it'll go away. So I tend to put the challenge to people
What's our biggest challenge
with an issue?
Yeah.
Look, Mark, there are a series of challenges that the government is addressing because the big manufacturers are telling them that anti-dumping is an exercise they've got to address. It isn't free trade. We're looking for fair trade. Anti-dumping cost one of the big companies over $1 million to mount the case. They're addressing the excessive amounts of regulation in the 3 layers of government that we are faced with, where the same outcome is prescribed in 3 different sets of laws and a multitude of environmental laws that make life almost unbearable. The Australian Rail Association has pointed out to them that efficiencies in rail from Sydney to Perth are constrained by the multiplicity of licensing that the train driver requires. So anti-dumping, regulation, and there are some other issues that at the top end of things they've got to do, and one of them is subsidy. Now, while the bureaucrats will sit there and Treasury will sit there and everybody will preach the fact that we don't need tariffs and we don't need various other things to protect industry, in fact the government does have issues that cover automotive, and they've just launched in a massive recovery of automotive. Alcoa in Victoria, a massive recovery for Alcoa. Submarines are still going to be built in Australia, despite the fact that of the 6 only 1 is operative, but we are going to have a defence industry that is subsidised. So it's better that the government should stand up and say, we have a policy to support some areas of manufacturing. Unfortunately, it isn't the rail industry in Australia. Passenger vehicles have been made in China at a $700 million loss. Other companies have taken their manufacturing facilities to China and had iron ore wagons rejected. There are those sorts of issues at the top end. Where are the challenges? If we could get down to those sorts of issues, higher productivity, that is certainly one of the things that, they're the package of things that large manufacturers, much bigger than silly little companies like ours, but large manufacturers like BlueScope, One Steel, and others like that are going to the government and saying, you've got to do something, otherwise we won't.
As an industry or as an economy, do we understand what productivity is? And by that I mean, do we get the idea that it's actually driven by management to look at their human resources and the productivity that they deliver? Do we do that very well?
Yes, managers certainly understand that if they introduce robots, they will get rid of 10 people and 1 person will run 1 robot that does the work of 10, so the productivity of that 1 employee goes up tenfold. Yes,
do we pay them more for running the robot though?
Oh, I think you do. I don't run a Ford or a General Motors company in this company, but I think you've got to pay a technician who runs, he's got to be better trained. It's like an airline pilot. A commercial pilot has a lot better training than a private pilot. Yeah, we do. Those big corporations, they understand productivity. And the mining companies understand productivity very much. They do it, and we understand productivity too. We have sales per employee as a key performance indicator. We understand KPIs very well. Yeah, we understand that. But look, I think that one of the major issues that we've got to face up to is to be more innovatory. And the government policies to do that and to assist us in that are there, and we've got to avail ourselves of them and use them better. And we've got to stop being scared, maybe because it's being sold by an academic. And there are some very good academics, don't get me wrong.
We're not sure how to access it.
Yes, and there are some, I'm not trying to just bucket the academic, but the academic has a very good job teaching people and doing things like that. But if a professor were to walk into our company and tell us how we should do things, we would have a little bit of hesitancy listening to him. Had he been an American academic, that's different, because those American academics walk between industry, government and academia very easily. I mean, if you went and looked at Madeleine Albright today, she'd be a professor of law at Cincinnati University. And 2 years ago, she was sitting there beside Bill Clinton. If you look at Harvard professors...
Should industry work with the University
Much
of
better,
Newcastle,
yes.
and say we want
Yes.
that transference.
Yes, and what we should be having is PhD students actually sitting down, having a clerk's job and listening to the daily grind that we go through and listening to the coalface, so to speak, of where industry is at. Yes, indeed. To get out of this expression, to get out of their ivory tower, which again, I don't take it too literally, but really and truly to get on the front foot in industry and to have that swap. They tried to do it with the CRCs, with the cooperative research centres, where there was a cooperation between university research and with corporate research, so that the universities didn't just do pure and applied research and finish up with a better looking red apple. They sat down with the agricultural industry to try and work out why they needed a better red apple. Those things, those cooperative research centres have been going for, I think, Hawke's time in the 1990s. What the outcome is, I'm not sure. I don't think anybody's ever done an audit of the cost benefits of those sorts of research centres. But certainly we've got to work more closely, and we've got to listen more to the academic research that comes out of those universities, where down on the Central Coast, for example, Anton Kritz is doing some very interesting work recording innovation and looking at innovation and talking to people, and has what might be called a focus group of companies that they're trying to look at to be innovatory.
Again, coming back, it is about saying, yes, it's good. It's what you've been doing is right. You just need to do more of it.
In the Hunter, yes.
Yeah.
What we've all been doing, we need to all do better, and not to be scared about embracing this frog, you might say, because one day you could kiss it and it'll turn into a shining white knight.
May we start making sure
Wonderful.
we kiss all the frogs.
Yes,
huh?
all the ugly frogs, indeed.
Thank you.